What is computer science education's purpose? What function does it play in society? Asking these questions is belaboring the obvious. Look around you. Computer sciences are the quickest growing field of employment by an estimated margin of 4 to 1 ahead of any other field. Computers make our world go round. They've had the largest impact on humanity out of any invention since their inception over half a century ago. Almost 90% of people worldwide have access to electronics, and 100% of people worldwide are influenced by electronics. Computers have connected the world and provided a medium for us to tear it apart. They've sent us to the moon and plunged us into the deepest depths of our oceans. Technology's function in society is wide-spanning, covering almost all sectors of business, commerce, industry, communication, and education. Technology is the single most essential, non-essential thing to humanity, and even today it's used to fuel what is essential. Now you may ask, what is computer science education's purpose? Open your eyes. No matter where you are, the cell phone in your pocket, the screen you're watching this on, almost everything, down to the clothes you're wearing, can have its existence at least partially attributed to computers. Each of these inventions started as an idea in the mind of some student of computer science, someone who learned from books, the web, school, mentorship. Their education shaped their ideas and equipped them with the tools necessary to change the world. Technological education is the gateway which allows the innovators of tomorrow to develop their skills at the forefront of this computer storm which is rebuilding the world. And this is why it should be terrifying to hear that the computer science curriculum in Ontario high schools is outdated, actively promotes factory-style working, and ultimately discourages students from further academic pursuits. A structural functionalist would seek to analyze how the education system works with the professional world to function coherently. How do these two social systems connect? The education system was originally designed to lay a foundation for students to build upon as they enter into a profession. This is its manifest function. In order to achieve this function, the education system should be engineered to equip students with the tools and experience that lead into their jobs in the professional world. Here's a timeline of the development of popular software used for application development in the professional world. And here is where the different software packages that are taught by Ontario high schools fall on this timeline. The Ontario education system is about 2 decades behind adequate preparation for workplace. For perspective, the computer science curriculum in Ontario was last revised in 2008, and even this revision is frequently implemented by schools with more than 2-decade-old software from 1998. This is software you might more appropriately find in a computer history course. It is important to note that technological education requires frequent updates. The fundamentals of traditional subjects like math and English have largely stayed the same for over 100 years. This starkly contrasts with the development of technology, which has taken off like a wildfire, and new skills are constantly in demand. Notably, the process of creating software for this system from 1998 is strikingly different from that of this computer from last year. This is an example of dysfunction. Dysfunction in the theory of structural functionalism refers to a social system which has a manifest or latent function leading to social instability. In other words, dysfunction occurs when a social system fails to meet the requirements of its neighboring social systems. The use of outdated software in the Ontario education system means that it is unable to prepare its students to meet the requirements of the professional world. But why is it like this? Outdated software is still in use today because updating to modern software will require rewriting parts of the curriculum and course materials. But most of all, updating to modern software will require teachers to get more frequent training. Every year that these outdated educational software packages age, they only continue to become less and less effective. As time passes, Ontario's computer science education's latent functions have become inhibitory of its manifest function. Many of the fundamental programming concepts taught in schools are obsolete. An infamous example of this is digital animation. A software package's complexity can be approximated by comparing the number of lines of code required to accomplish a certain task. In an ideal world, software developers are able to write as concise code as possible in order to promote readability, reusability, and efficiency. Here's an example of an animation created with the educational software Ready to Program, which is commonly used in Ontario high schools and in our school. Ready to Program was created in 1998 and was last updated in 2003, originally costing $49.95. Here's a picture of what computers looked like back in 2003. Creating this simple animation of a spinning roulette board and ball requires the programmer to write approximately 900 lines of code while using Ready to Program. Using the free and modern alternative software package P5.js, which was last updated in October of 2022, this same animation requires only 79 lines of code. With outdated software, students spend more time fighting against the tools they are using than they do actually learning and experimenting with programming concepts. You may also notice the severe flickering present in the animation created with Ready to Program. Many of the educational software packages used by schools are incapable of supporting animation, or require tedious or impractical workarounds to get them functioning. Ontario high schools promptly ignore this fact and will have students rigging together some form of botched animation anyways. Animation in Ready to Program is a prime example of this. Ready to Program uses a single buffered drawing system, which is quoted as being impossible to create coherent animation without significant flickering and screen tearing. Ready to Program has direct technical limitations which deem it inadequate for effectively teaching students. This statement holds true for many other popular software packages used throughout Ontario, and for more than just animation. How do you rotate this rectangle in Ready to Program? You can't. With modern software, it can be done in 2 lines of code. Alright, the course materials are outdated, but surely schools attempt to do their best with the materials they have, right? What should be frustrating is that not even this is true. The Ontario government is allergic to admitting that its computer science education is outdated. It persists that these courses prepare students to work in today's technology industry's landscape. In these classes, students will be taught outdated techniques, systems, and resources and be lied to that these are still commonplace in the working world. These classes will look unknowing students in the eyes and say that the Java programming language is at the forefront of enterprise software development, comparing it to programming languages like C and C++. In reality, the competition looks more like this. An entire portion of these courses is dedicated to reading and writing files from code. These courses store data entirely in raw plain text files. And while there is so much wrong with databasing with plain text files, the most concerning part is that these courses don't acknowledge any of these problems. A student could graduate believing that this is how it's done in the real world. The education system fails to recognize its flaws and so is unable to prepare students for the drastic transition from school to the workplace. A common phrase is that students will have to forget half of what they learned in school to succeed in the computer science workforce. A requirement to forget information is a case example of how Ontario's computer science education not only fails to competently teach computer science, but also inhibits students from learning correctly. This is a clear example of dysfunction, where Ontario's computer science education works directly against society. But the Computer Science Education Ontario also encourages factory-style working by adhering to the American College Board's computer science teaching standards. You may be familiar with this association as they are known for operating advanced placement courses throughout North America. The AP College Board standards have not been updated since 2003 and continue the trend of innate obsolescence. Overall, the AP classroom has been criticized as leading to rigid stultification, a kind of mindless genuflection to a prescribed plan of study that squelches creativity and free inquiry. More simply, a former longtime AP College Board teacher stated, "The AP classroom is where intellectual curiosity goes to die." The AP classroom is built around passing a test rather than actually promoting individual experimentation, understanding, application, or learning. A structural functionalist could frame the AP classroom as having the manifest function of teaching students how to pass the AP test. However, this manifest function is misguided and does not effectively mimic what a course's actual manifest function should be, which is to prepare students for the workforce. Even at a glance, the idea of evaluating a student's computer science understanding or innovative ability through a standardized test is weak. This is software development. This is not software development. Testing a software engineer's ability to write software with a piece of paper is like testing an artist's ability to create art with mud and a cave wall. This system sets students up for success when writing a test and for failure when actually developing software. Tests encourage memorization. Most of the computer science AP exam is regurgitating obscure features of the only programming language you're allowed to use on the test. Java. Remember what the problem is with pretending that Java is the only programming language that exists? A computer science course should prepare students with general and applicable knowledge useful for whichever programming language they need to pick up. Just like you spend the first 3 years of school learning English and the next dozen years exploring what you can do with English, a programming course should spend just the introduction learning about the programming language and the rest of the course learning about its applications. The fact that at school you're learning in English is irrelevant to what actually matters, which is the content of what you are learning. You could just as well study math, social sciences, or any other subject in any other language besides English. Just like a math exam should test your math abilities language independently, a computer science exam should test your computer science abilities language independently. You would never find a question on a math test asking about language features, like how do you spell the following mathematical operations in English? So why is it commonplace to ask about language features in a computer science setting? Just like the math course is called math, not math in English, the computer science course is called computer science, not computer computer science in Java. Testing on these obscure language features not only forces students to memorize information that may be entirely useless to them depending on something as simple as what company they end up working for, but it also masks the true skills required to work in computer science. A student may take the AP Computer Science course, and because the course is heavily geared towards memorization, they may believe that memorizing language features is an essential skill, when in reality, Google is a developer's best friend, and skills like adaptability, creative thinking, and innovation are in much higher demand. This is another example of how computer science education fails to teach the correct skills, and in doing so falls into dysfunction. This memorization and emphasis on following instructions can be categorized as factory work. When you think of a factory, you think of obtusely following tasks, one instruction after another until the aching rhythmic motion of your hands makes every last instruction rot into your brain. In a similar sense, the AP Computer Science classroom gives students variations of repeating questions that require monotonously following computer instructions by hand to achieve a result. This is an 80 by 25 grid of characters. A common assignment in computer science courses is to draw an intricate shape piece by piece in order to gain a better understanding of position in a console window. Each of these characters was manually positioned painstakingly through a repeated process of trial and error, a little to the left, a little up. Moreover, these courses will prevent students from developing programs and using tools which allow them to complete these tasks more efficiently, which is a direct example of discouraging innovation. We do not want the innovators of tomorrow to be trained under this mindset. The most disheartening and threatening piece of this all is how the Computer Science Education Ontario managed to squeeze any will of pursuing computer science out of its students. The combination of outdated content and strictly rigid course material creates an environment which bluntly meets students' aspirations of becoming a creative game developer or innovative software engineer with manual, monotonous, and frankly boring assignments. This turns a course which is otherwise a potential favorite into a student's worst nightmare. Teaching students computer science in this way is the equivalent of forcing them to catch mosquitoes with chopsticks before introducing them to a bug net. There are easy ways to draw this shape to the screen without spending several hours manually plotting each character. Here are a few listed. Students who complete this assignment gain the false impression that computer science is manual and boring, whereas in reality the modern world of computing is much more streamlined and down to creative thinking and adaptability. It's a game of problem solving. I personally entered the world of programming through a single hour-long coding lesson in the 4th grade. I was fortunate enough to have an encouraging and inspiring introduction to what is now my favorite subject, hobby, passion. I feel a terrible, disheartening feeling every time an aspiring high school student enters their first computer science class only to find they are frustrated and confined by the outdated and undocumented course material. I often wonder, where would I be had I received the same demoralizing introduction to programming? What great innovators of tomorrow are we losing today because of our system's inability to foster their curiosity? This Ontario computer science education system kills the inner ambition and imagination of its students. But how do we solve this problem? A structural functionalist would analyze that the Ontario education system is a communication structure, and as such it uses several modes of communication, namely teachers, course materials, and exams. Each of these pieces are used to teach students. In order to master the computer science education system, the government must first master each of these modes of communication. Teachers play an essential role in educating students. What does the perfect computer science teacher look like? The perfect computer science teacher is someone who possesses a vast knowledge of computers, programming, and technology, and who has experience working in real-life applications of their skill. How do you create the perfect computer science teacher? It starts with a proper and frequent training. A teacher should be up to date with the latest technology so that they're able to engage and inspire their students. Course materials are arguably the most important aspect of a computer science course. They are the content of the course and represent what skills and knowledge the student should embody by the end of the course. In order to best prepare students for the workforce and accomplish the computer science education system's manifest function, these materials should be designed to provide an adequate foundation which leads into the software used in production in the real world. And these materials should be frequently updated to ensure that they are not teaching against best practices and to ensure that they stay ahead of the continuous curve of development in the technological world. There are hundreds of free and open source materials online, and many organizations have demonstrated their willingness to partner with education. One example is the Processing Foundation. Exams and tests dictate what knowledge a student should have by the end of a course. They should be engineered to promote adaptability and problem solving rather than memorization and technical ability. Exams which look to promote the use of references and documentation could provide sandboxed and/or restricted devices that can be used as quick reference throughout the exam. Overall, exams should be weighed less in favor of assignments which more appropriately demonstrate the ability and knowledge of a student. This is only scratching the surface of Ontario's underlying neglect for computer science education. It's an utter disappointment that the government forces students to rely on extracurriculars and free internet services to learn what the government spends millions of dollars on annually. The terrible truth is that the freely available resources are not outdated past 1998, and don't force students to think in a factory mindset, and even work to foster students' imaginative abilities where our government looks to shatter them. If there is one thing you should take away from the speech, it's that we should all be terrified, but we're not. Curriculums take a great amount of time to develop, but if not one person has felt the need to update the course material since 1998, that's 2 decades ago. Forget before COVID, before the first iPhone, before Y2K, before any high school student was born. And that shows we are not nearly scared enough.